systems. But again, I have a genuine concern here on the ground, Minister, and we have seen recently with the recent flooding, and I know this has been raised in the past at various levels, where a river bank busts its bank and extensive flooding happens in an area, and it has a huge negative impact on agriculture, on agricultural output, and most importantly has a huge negative impact on dwellings that are flooded. There is a huge conflict here, again, where we're trying to protect our ecosystems, but when flooding occurs, that there is huge restrictions on people repairing their riverbank, returning their lands to normal agricultural practice, and in fact getting into their homes. And I've had direct experience of this in County Waterford, where the River Suir breached its banks recently, a couple of months ago in February, due to the heavy rainfall, and it's all related. But when the people that had to leave their homes because they were flooded went to repair their banks, the bureaucratic barriers that they faced were huge. They needed waste permits, they needed planning permission, they needed environmental impact assessments, and all of this is feeding into a negative reaction from residents in a huge hinterland to protecting diversity and biological habitats. These are the farmers that are living along the riverbanks for generations, that have protected these habitats, are now being forced into a negative reaction to SACs, Special Areas of Conservation, and there is opposition in the public, and that needs to be addressed. And it's all very well to bring in policies and directives and all the rest of it, but unless our public and our citizens buy into it, we're going to face huge opposition. So what I'd be calling for, Minister, to address the likes of that, and I support protecting ecosystems and biological diversity, that we have tangible, practical systems or protocols where crisis situations arise due to flooding or whatever, that in collaboration with the local authority, in collaboration with the Habitats and Wildlife Service, that there is an easier system to return people's livelihoods and their agricultural lands and their residents back to normality, that we don't have this bureaucratic mess and tangle that we have at the moment. So these, as a public representative, are issues that I'm picking up on the ground, Minister. I know your officials and yourselves go to Europe with the best of intentions, but I think you need to go with practical examples of how these are impacting on Irish citizens. And I would ask that you and your officials would address those in the best interests of our citizens, but also keeping in line with the directives that we're meant to comply with. So there are just some issues that I'd like to raise with you, Minister, and I'd hope that you might raise them at an EU level as well. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Deputy. The need for common sense in relation to implementation of our statutory responsibilities at a time of crisis. And I have seen it first hand with you, Deputy Coffey, the issues that you raised around the River Suir. We have, I think, a bureaucratic system built up that is not fit for purpose at the moment in dealing with the crisis of where humans, through no fault of their own, but through unexpected and unintended consequences from weather patterns, are actually having to deal themselves with this bureaucracy, and it is contributing to a negative view of European directives and a negative view of some of the organisations that we have under in the state that are dealing with these matters. And I would say that the National Parks and Wildlife Service needs to sit down and review the type of measures that are being implemented at the moment at a time of crisis. Where I visited a home where it was flooded, where there was absolute mayhem in terms of what people were going to do next, and uncertainty in relation to where they were going to find the means of a livelihood, as well as find the means of where they were going to have a home for the following few months, or indeed up to 6 or 12 months in some cases, before they were resolved. So protocols are required for crisis management. Common sense is a little bit suspect in relation to matters that are come under the term crisis, particularly in relation to storm damage and flooding. So I will actually be in contact with Minister Deenihan to see how we can actually get the National Parks and Wildlife Service, the local authorities, the OPW and all of the various stakeholders around the table to work out that protocol that you've called for, which I fully support.
On that, Minister, I understand that there is some crisis management protocol for state agencies already in existence, but what I'm asking for is an extension of that to citizens where a crisis involves around a flooding event or an extreme weather event. And I do know, as far as I understand, that the IFA are also working on that, and I would ask that the departments, both your department and Minister Deenihan's department, would work with the like of sectoral interests like the IFA and others to come up with a protocol that works and that will get the support of the citizens that are affected. And in the business community, they have business continuity crisis management plans. And the definition in simple terms of it is it's common sense applied in a structured manner. Common sense applied in a structured manner. And that's what we need with regard to the application of EU directives. Because if directives are negatively impacting on people's livelihoods, their homes and their families, that goes out into a wider community and it turns people against them. So that's the message I'd like to go to Europe, that we need them practical, that in the event of a crisis that we can manage them, and otherwise we manage them to protect our ecosystems and our biodiversity in a way that's possible.
No, I support that fully, and I will ask as well Sean Hogan, who's the head of emergency delivery of the emergency response in my department, to have a look at this as part of the lessons of the storm of the winter of 2013-2014 as well, to see how we can get practical solutions at a time of crisis for many citizens and householders, and where livelihoods are actually at risk as well. But what we're supposed, just to conclude on the issues, Cathaoirleach, what we're trying to do here is to recognise that there's a need to get down to specifics, and your examples that you've given today is an example of where practical measures can be taken to meet our national sectoral objectives. So when we get the departments, before us with their sectoral plans, let's see what are the practical programmes that they're going to have proposed that will meet our objectives, and that have a common sense view about it, and have something that will actually make our European objectives or climate change targets that we have to comply with practical and implementable, and that people will feel good about it rather than feel it's a challenge for them.